Hello. Today I wanted to sort of talk about Edge of Eternities and the cards that I'm picking up for my commander decks as well as for my cube. So far I've really only talked in depth about one of my commander decks, and that was Norn the Wary. But one card that I wanted to get for him was Planetary Annihilation. So this is one of the new cards in the Edge of Eternities commander deck. And that's the one where for 5 mana, each player chooses 6 lands they control, then sacrifices the rest. Planetary Annihilation deals 6 damage to each creature. Well, first of all, Norn is going to avoid that by exiling himself when the spell is cast. But I am appreciative of this because it really shows that WotC is going in the direction of trying to counter landfall or green ramp in some fashion. I still think that 6 lands is a little too generous. I think that they could probably thread the needle and have people keep 4 or 5 lands, and it would probably be fine. But baby steps. I know that they're really trying to discourage mass land denial at lower power brackets, but to see something like Planetary Annihilation in a precon does give me hope that they are trying to do something to rein in the green player, even though that's kind of anathema in commander circles. But the other card that I wanted to pick up for Norn was West Stalker Ardent, and that's just another one in the long line of cards that do similar things to this, of where whenever a creature enters, deals 1 damage to each opponent, but this also has the benefit of dealing damage for creatures or artifacts, which Norn has a lot of anyways. So those are just a couple of cards I picked up for the Norn deck and I'm going to try and put in. I think one of the cards that's probably going to come out is Pandemonium. I keep trying to put it in, but it never works out. People are just always getting up on the Norn play when I play it, and so it's like the only time that Pandemonium can be played is if somebody else is the bigger threat, and it's tough when you're playing Norn because you put a target on yourself when you start dealing damage every turn to every player. But we'll see what happens with Planetary Annihilation. I'm hoping that it gets a positive reception and WotC feels like they can do more things like this in the future. I did pick up a couple copies of Sur Secundi Void Altar, and I want one of those for my Rakdos Lord of Riots deck, as well as the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. Both of those care about big creatures, and being able to sacrifice them to draw cards just seems like an awesome deal, and I'm glad that this one is not among the more expensive of the planet lands. Like the blue and the green one are the most expensive right now, but I'm not really interested in either of those. I don't really play too much green in general, and the few green decks that I have, they're not really concerned about going wide. Xeris, puts out a lot of snake tokens, but I don't really use them for attacks. Like, I don't have Beastmaster's Ascension or anything in the deck. I didn't want to split the focus of Xeris, and so the snake tokens are mainly there to be sacrifice fodder for various effects like Goblin Bombardment or to combo with Perforos. So the goal is really not to attack with the snake tokens, so I don't really have a ton of use for anything that cares about having a lot of creature tokens in play, like the green planet would. And with the Gitrog, it's about going tall and not wide, which makes it to where the green planet does not do much for me, but the black planet, the Sur Secundi Void Altar, just works out great in both of those decks. And also in Rakdos 2.0, since it does lean more red than black, I put Tanook Steadfast second. And he's the one that gives warp to all of your red creatures and artifact creatures and lets you cast them for 2 and a red. But Rakdos can even get that cost down cheaper, to where you could just be paying a single red if you've dealt 2 damage to your opponents this turn, because it turns out 3 cost warp when you're casting for that. You can, instead of casting from your hand for Rakdos' reduced cost, and at that point it's basically sneak attack, because you're just paying a single red to put a creature into play with haste, only instead of being sacrificed in a turn, it gets warped out, and then you can play it later. And you can play it on a later turn, and hopefully at another discounted cost from Rakdos. So yeah, since most of the creatures in the deck are red or artifact, then that was just a no-brainer. It was already running the Perforos Bronze Blooded in the deck, and Tanook is basically just another version of that, something that grants my creatures haste and lets me cheat big creatures into play, acts as sort of a redundancy for the commander in case I'm not able to get him out or keep him on the board. But yeah, that's what I wanted to get for Rakdos. I mentioned Gitrog before with the Black Planet Land, but a couple of other cards I wanted to put in there. Another one from the theme deck was the Exploration Broodship, and I don't know why this one is only sitting at around $2 to $3 because it seems just about as good as Exploration is as a card. I don't know why people like want to rush Exploration out so early. I mean, it's the same thing with Burgeoning. Burgeoning's another one of those are two cards that are both north of $20, and it seems like no matter how many times they get reprinted, they still manage to keep a high price tag. People love playing these cheap 1-mana enchantments that just let you dump all the lands in your hand out. I'm just saying, if you're going to do that, you need to have a ton of card draw to take advantage of it. Otherwise, you just dump out your whole hand, and then you're just missing land drops for the next few turns unless you can immediately get your hand back. So I'm not saying you shouldn't play it in turn 1 to take advantage of it. You can, but it's going to require having a follow-up to restock your hand really quick. And it does work with the Gitrog Ravenous Ride because he can just draw you so many cards, but again, he's still putting lands from your hand onto the battlefield. But I don't even necessarily have it in there for the extra land ability, although it can definitely come in handy. I mainly have it in there for the third effect when you get it fully stationed, and then you're able to cast cards from your discard pile, which goes great with the Gitrog since you're going to be sacrificing big, high-powered creatures every turn, and then after you sacrifice them, you can that turn sacrifice 1 land to get the creature back and play it. And it's great because when you sacrifice, you're going to be drawing so many cards and putting so many lands into play that sacrificing one's not going to be a big deal. And then you're just able to recast the creature to sacrifice again the next turn. It just seems awesome. And it's really mind-boggling to me that this card is so low. I was thinking it would be one of those ones that was going to be pricey right out of the gate, but it's not. And I don't know if it's just the station ability. People don't know how to gauge it, or maybe I'm too optimistic and maybe the price is right. And Exploration Broodship is just not that good. Maybe all of the planets and the station things will just be not as impactful as I think they're going to be. But we'll have to see what happens. But I think if you can get Exploration Broodship for $2 or $3, I would say buy it, because I think when you look at the pedigree of the cards it's competing against, a lot of them that let you play extra lands are in the $20 to $25 range, and I don't see why this one, wouldn't at least be half of that. So yeah, to pick it up for $2 or $3 seems like a really good deal to me. And the other one I want to get is the Might Form Harmonizer, and this is the one where whenever landowners play, you can double a creature's power until end of turn. And so this one, it just goes insane with Gitrog. The timing's a little unfortunate because when Gitrog is sacrificing a creature, it's only after combat damage has been dealt. And so if you're going to make the most of it, you need some way to sacrifice the creature or make use of it after you've dealt combat damage. I guess if you were to give the Gitrog double strike, then you could hit once, sack a creature, get a ton of lands into play, double up the power a crazy amount, and then hit him again with regular combat damage after the first strike damage resolves. But I like the Might Form Harmonizer just because there's other cards in there that let you get back a bunch of lands, which you can play before your combat phase to just really get some insane power on the board and just take people out in one hit. So yeah, Might Form Harmonizer is one that I'm definitely know I needed to include in Gitrog Ravenous Ride. A couple others I got, just really kind of small things for Kaikar, the Zephyr Awakener. I got Consult the Star Charts. It's just another fun 2-mana instant that I can run. There's really not a lot of ramp. You're not going to be getting out lands more than once per turn, typically. But I mainly like it because it's something that you can put onto an Isochron Scepter and then just do it every turn. And it just gets better and better as the game goes on. And when you imprint and you cast it, you can still pay the additional cost to kick it each time you do. So every turn you can be paying 4 mana to reveal X or X number of lands and then take 2 cards, put them in your hand. So it just seems really good for that deck. And for Osgir, I added Melded Moxide. Osgir wants to get artifacts into the graveyard, and Melded Moxide is an artifact that lets you discard a card to draw a card, even ignoring the whole sacrifice it to get a robot creature token. I like it just because it's an artifact that Osgir can sacrifice, or you can copy and get multiple copies of, and he's going to help you keep your graveyard stocked with artifacts to exile for value. And then one of my newer decks, Arthur, Marigold Knight, I have in Starwinder and Anti-Causal Vestige. And those are a couple of cards with Warp, both really high-costed cards. But that's great because Arthur wants to cheat them into play anyways, and Warp is just a way that they can cheat themselves into play. And when you combine that with all of the blink effects to try and keep them in play after Arthur's ability would return them to your hand, you can set blink them and they come back as new cards, and they stick around. And so I think that those two can really have a lot of synergy with the Arthur deck, and just helping in the case of Starwinder, just drawing a whole bunch of cards, or with the Anti-Causal Vestige can just help draw a card and then casting things from my hand for free. So just seems like some great effects on these cards that will go really well in Arthur. But that's really it as far as cards from the new set that I'm adding to my commander decks. I didn't really see anything that I wanted for Xeris, except for maybe a Weft Stalker Ardent, same as Norn the Wary. Xeris also cares about a lot of things that Norn cares about in terms of creatures entering and dealing damage to opponents. But I didn't really see any cards I wanted for my mono-white equipped deck with Balin. And I also didn't see anything I wanted for Winota. Winota is kind of on the chopping block as well. Just the fact that it is by itself a game changer. It's just tough to keep around, because it's like they're basically saying, hey, we think this deck is too oppressive. So I don't know if I'm going to take Winota apart. I really like it, but I almost feel like I've kind of solved the deck, and things need to have like a really specific criteria in order for me to add to it. But for all the others, I was able to find something for the most part. And Balin, there's that new equipment that's kind of like Mindslaver. I thought about putting things the Dominion bracelet, but I don't know if I'm gonna go for that or not. That's another one that just people hate playing against Mindslaver type effects. One other thing I want to talk about was about my cube and how I've been making updates to that. And one of the things I wanted to update were the tricolor cards. There is one of each of the tricolor cards in the deck. And so for Esper, for example, it has Alayla, the Artful Provocateur. And I picked this one because, again, I tried to find things that had overlap between the various themes. And so blue and white is like a blink deck, but also kind of has a sub-theme of caring about flying evasive creatures. And so it's got a lot of flying creatures with in the battlefield effects. And then black and white cares about making tokens as well as gaining life. And then blue and black cares about artifacts. And so Layla tries to thread the needle on all of those because it has flying, death touch, and lifelink. It gives other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. And then when you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, you create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. And so it's really hitting on all three of those themes. It cares about flyers, it cares about lifelink and making tokens, and it also cares about casting artifact spells. It doesn't really have a strong blink connection, but I found that finding one that threads the needle on all three themes is pretty tough. So you kind of take what you can get, but it does play on the secondary theme for blue-white, which is flyers and evasive creatures. So I still count that as a win. But when I first made this cube, I just didn't really have, or there weren't cards that would fit all of those themes. And so I've been excited as the years have gone on that they've been able to find cards to sort of fill in those gaps that I've been able to add as recent sets have come out. In one case, so for Teamer, the card that I was using was Maelstrom Wanderer, and it was just all your creatures have haste, and you do Cascade. But I don't think anybody ever drafted it, anybody ever tried to play it, because it just didn't have anything to do with any of the themes. It was a huge costed creature. It wasn't working out. But I think I finally found something where there's great overlap between the red-green Auras theme, the blue-green +1 counter theme, and then the blue-red Spellslinger theme. And that was Eshki Dragonclaw, which is from the Tarkir Dragonstorm. And so it is a 4/4 for 4 with Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 1, and says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you cast both a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn, draw a card, and put 2 +1/+1 counters on Eshki Dragonclaw. So again, it cares about counters. You put 2 counters on her, so that works out with the proliferate and counters matters themes of blue-green. It cares about casting non-creature spells, which could be either an instant or sorcery from the blue and red Spellslinger, or it could be an aura or an equipment from the red-green auras theme. Plus it has Ward 1, so that makes it better to equip. It's a little harder to destroy that way. Also has Vigilance and Trample, so it wears those equipments and those counters really well. And so this is a card that just has synergy across the board with all 3 of those archetypes. So if you are drafting a Teamer deck in the cube, Eshki Dragonclaw will work well with whatever your main focus is, whether it's counters, whether it's auras and equipment, or whether it's instants or sorceries. Another one I upgraded was the I got Fleetfoot Dancer added to the cube. I've always had a soft spot for Streets of New Capenna. And this one just has Trample, Lifelink, and Haste, and so it fits the green-white theme of life gain and tokens, which is a new theme that I'm trying out now. I'll go into more detail on that in a little bit. But also, it's red-green, so it can wear equipment and auras really well with the Trample and Lifelink, and then it also has red and white aggro, when that's the way the haste and the trample comes in. And so it fits all 3 of those archetypes as well. And there's a couple other new ones that I'm planning to change. I just do not have the replacement cards yet, but replacing Queen Marchesa and Leovold, a couple of cards from Conspiracy, and I'm replacing them with a couple of new legends. The Zergo Stormrender, which is a red, white, and black, and then Xavier Sol, Infested Captain, which is black, green, and blue. And so those ones have more to do more synergy with the themes in the cube than Leovold or Queen Marchesa did. They were just kind of in there because they fit the colors. But I've got a lot more planning and work to do on my cube, and actually wanted to stop and kind of show you what I've been working on as far as it goes. So I wanted to stop here for a second, kind of show off the cube and what I'm working on, and sort of a work in progress right now, but just to give you an idea of my process and how I go about it. Okay, I wanted to show what it looks like when I'm working on making changes to my cube. Now this may look like just a big mess, but there's a method to the madness. See, each of these piles with the big die on it, those are the different archetypes, the 10 different archetypes in the draft. And so we've got here from the top left the green-white archetype, and then blue-green, blue-white, black and white, blue and black, blue and red, red and black, green and black, green and red, and then red-white over here. And so again, you've got just the allied colors with Azorius, Dimir, Rakdos, Gruul, and Selesnya. And then you've got the enemy-colored pairs with Golgari, Boros, Simic, Orzhov, and Izzet. And so all these other smaller piles are where cards that have synergies between multiple draft archetypes. And so things that only the green-white archetype cares about go in that pile. But then we also have cards that green and white, specifically green cards, that green, white, and blue-green care about go in that pile. And so that's what each of these are, the directions pointing between the 2 of them. And so for this one, these are the white cards that green-white cares about, but also the black and white sacrifice. And so then that is pointed there in between the 2 of them. And here are the green cards that care about green-white as well as black-green. And so those are aimed at that. And then the green cards that green-white and green-red care about goes right there. Then we have the white cards that green-white cares about, but also the red-white Boros cares about. And it's like that with each of these piles goes there. And this helps me get an idea of how many of each type there are. So for some of them, example, it's pretty slim pickings. This is the overlap between the black-red discard theme and then the blue-black artifact theme. So there's not a lot of synergy there. And so I'm looking and saying, well, what are some cards that the artifact deck would like, that the discard deck would also like? And right now, the only thing I've found is Graveyard Recursion that also cares about artifacts, maybe like Beacon of Unrest or Emergency Weld, something like that, something that could add to the cube that would benefit more of the graveyard synergies that would benefit both discard or artifacts. But that's basically what I've been doing here, and as a follow-up to my previous cube discussion videos, I have, I think, maybe come to a solution for the issues I was having with green in my cube. So, for the longest time, the theme for green and white was just human tribal, but there were no real payoffs to speak of. Like, Sigarda was pretty much the only thing, and I've decided to change it up. So you can see that Lathiel, the Bounteous Dawn, and Night of Autumn would be replacing these two. And the theme now is going to be more of tokens, but also life gain. And so the Ajani, the Greathearted, that was in the deck, or that is in the cube, you can stay, because he was already fitting that theme pretty nicely of caring about gaining life and caring about going wide and playing lots of creatures. I'm adding in new cards from Edge of Eternities in there to help bolster that up. This was one of the bigger shakeups for the cube, is changing green-white's whole identity. And before, this was a black-white tokens theme, and it still is pretty much, but I'm also leaning more heavily into life gain and sacrifice, which is also taking some from the green and black, because before that I was trying to do green and black life gain, but I'll be honest, there just was not a ton of support for it in those colors. And so I'm focusing less on the life gain, but more so on sacrifice, but also throwing in some more token makers. And so you've got Ygritte, Eater of All, which definitely cares about sacrificing. Deathrite Shaman doesn't really fit the theme as much anymore as it used to, but I'm still keeping him in for now. But yeah, it's playing with a lot of the black token producers that was being used primarily by the black and white token build. So I've basically taken 2 archetypes and trying to stretch them out over 3 factions, which I'm hoping will work better than, having 1.5 themes and then 0 themes there. So the major changes are just adding a lot more token producers in green that will be both shared by green and black and green and white. And then a lot of the I added more life gain payoffs for white, because there's a lot more of those to go around, and so that is taking up space in black and white, which cares about gaining life and sacrifice effects. The green and white is tokens and sacrifice, and the black-green is, token life gain here. This one is token sacrifice. So that's where these 3 factions are, and I still need to playtest, still need to see how it all shakes out, but I'm pretty pleased so far. There's definitely a lot of synergy here, less so over here with the Spellslinger discard and artifacts. But part of it is they are pretty different. You would expect to find synergy where there's a lot of overlap between the themes, and so ultimately it's just going to have to determine when I'm satisfied where the levels are for all of these. But that kind of gives you some insight into just the process of how I try to make sure that the cube is evenly balanced. And I just want to make sure that there's roughly equal support amongst all the cubes. And that's one of the things that prompted this, was just going through and looking at the various archetype color pairings, realizing just how little support green-white humans had, how few payoffs there were for green and black life gain, and just realizing that the white color pairs needed to have the life gain payoffs. And green can use it, green-black can potentially use it as well. There is going to be life gain effects in green, there's going to be life gain effects in black, but it didn't feel right to have green-black life gain be the theme when it wasn't being fully supported. And most of the payoffs are still going to be in the white section of those color pairs, but green and black are just going to be more of a supplemental supporting to helping that whole theme to play out. But thanks for taking a look at this overview. I plan to do a more deep dive into the changes made once I'm able to go through and get everything how I wanted. This is just sort of a behind the scenes of the process. Well, thanks for listening. I did just want to go over the last 2 tricolored cards I'll be replacing, but with Zergo Stormrender. He's from the Dragonstorm Commander decks. And he's a red, white, and black for a 3/3 with Mobilize 1. And that's whenever he attacks, you create a tapped attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token and sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. And then whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, each opponent loses 1 life. And so again, it's a very aggressive card, cares about attacking creatures, and so that definitely fits into the Boros red-white aggro theme. It cares about creature tokens and sacrificing them, and so that works out perfectly for white and black. And then red and black is discard, but he has you drawing cards when creatures leave, so you can just supplement the card you're discarding by getting new cards with Zurgo back. So I thought that worked out well for those. And then the last one I wanted to talk about was Xavier Saul, Infested Captain. So that's black, green, blue for a 3/3. And he has 2 tap abilities. You can tap and remove a counter from another permanent you control to populate, where you create a token that's a copy of a creature token you control. And then you can also, alternatively, tap and sacrifice another creature to proliferate. And so, that kind of spells it out. The proliferate goes well with the green and blue +1 counter theme. And then the sacrificing a creature goes great with the green and black token sacrifice theme. I will say the one that's kind of weak here is the artifact synergies of black and blue, although I will say that they do have cards in blue-black that care about creating artifact creature tokens, and so the populate can come in handy there, as well as putting +1 counters on artifacts. So there is a little theme there, but it is a little shaky. It's definitely stronger in the counter and sacrifice themes of green, blue, and black, green, respectively. That's really it for right now. Thank you so much for listening. I still am working on this cube to make all of the changes from Edge of Eternities. There's a few cards I'm adding to my cube from the new set. Things like Pain for All will probably go in the Auras theme. Maybe. Same for Melt Strider's Resolve. Those are a couple of auras that can double as removal, which I'm trying to limit the number of instant speed removal, and having removal that's attached to an aura helps you to get value out of it right away. A few other cards from the new set that I want to put into the cube I'm trying to find a place for. Halia, Guided by Light, which I saw earlier in the life gain theme. Elegy Acolyte seems like it'll be really fun for artifacts, and just has a lot of synergies across all the different black strategies. Umbral Caller Zealots is just a really pushed uncommon and a great sack outlet. Sir Vondum Sunstar Exemplar, I think, could be another signpost card for the black-white theme. Might end up finally taking out Teysa Orzhov Scion for that, for Sir Vondum. Consult the star charts. I might just try running that in there as just another option for the Spellslinger deck. And Cosmogrand Zenith. That one looks like it'll be really fun. Hoping it won't be too oppressive, but it definitely feels very pushed. Nutrient Block. I'm trying to make some changes to the artifacts in the cube, putting in a lot more lower mana artifacts in there. And this one, Cantrips, it draws your card when it leaves. And the life gain effect does work out well with a lot of the different themes, the black and white and green and white. Cryogen Relic seems like a fun artifact to try out in the blue-black theme. And Scout for Survivors seems really strong in the aggro theme with all of the small creatures. You can hopefully get back a 2-drop and a 1-drop and just put a counter on each of them. It seems really powerful. But that's mainly it as far as cards from the new set I'm looking to include in the cube, and I'm still working to try and get all the levels right with everything. But I appreciate you kind of watching and seeing the process here. When I get closer, I'll kind of talk more about the changes I made and what was pulled out and for why. I'll be doing that for both my commander decks as well as my cube, but this is just sort of showing the work in progress right now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back again later with another video. Take care. Bye.